The Badge to the Bone podcast contains adult language, mature themes, psychological nudity. Viewer discretion is advised. The opinions expressed here are ours and ours alone. Buckle up.
All right, everyone, welcome back to Badge to the Bone podcast. I'm Denny.
I'm Al.
And we've got another episode here for you and a great guest tonight, Al.
Oh, yeah. I think they're going to like this one.
Yeah, it's going to be good. So let's jump on in.
I'm giving up on society, up on my family, up on your social disease. I'm giving up on the industry, up on democracy. Done with all your...
Hello, Al.
Hey, Denny.
How's your week?
I'm getting by.
Yeah.
I'm getting by.
Yeah.
I'm very glad to have a beverage at this point in the day.
Me too. Me as well.
Yeah.
We've had a good week that we
have.
You know, I'm going to drop it on, of course, this is going to be past news by the time this recording hits, but we were on the radio.
Yeah. Yeah.
WRVA in Richmond.
That was a lot of fun.
Jeff Katz show, yeah.
And Jeff had invited us on after he had come on our podcast.
Yeah, I'm going to throw that as a bonus. It's the 20 minutes or so that we were on there, and as a kind of a bonus episode, if you will. But that'll have dropped long before this one. So everybody listening to this should have already hopefully listened to that. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. He is such a great advocate for folks on the job. And you know, it's good to know he's a listener, and I've already seen people, you know, kind of start reaching out and going, "Hey, we heard this, we like it, you know. Hey, can we tell you about this? Can we tell you about that?" Which is, you know, it's great. It's the kind of thing we want.
It is. But you know, speaking about great advocates for the profession.
Yes. Well, yeah, we got a very, very special guest tonight. Somebody who, you know, frankly, I've busted his balls a couple times.
We've been trying to get this worked out since like the first couple episodes. But it actually, I think, is better because the first couple episodes, you know, we're still working out all the kinks and everything like that.
So it's probably a good thing there was a little bit of a delay.
We're slightly more polished this time, but I really, I mean, when I mean slightly more, I mean slightly more polished.
We polished the turd and put it out there.
Right. So it's a little bit more shiny, but...
yeah, we have on tonight Dr. Byron Greenberg, and he is a clinical psychologist who specializes in law enforcement and first responders, and he's got a pretty impressive resume here.
Yeah, no kidding.
He did his PhD at Loma Linda University. He has a master's from Johns Hopkins in applied behavioral counseling. He has been the director of his own practice, Greenberg and Associates, since 1998. He's also the president of the Virginia Peer Support Association, where he has been there since 2006. We came to know him personally, professionally. Mm-hmm. Yep. He is somebody that has a very significant footprint in Central Virginia as far as, really, in my opinion, I'm just going to say, the go-to person for law enforcement and first responders.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that.
And he was the contract psychologist for my agency. I think he was at your former agency and a number of other agencies. Yep. And to boot, some years back, he tells me, he goes, you know, I think it's time I walk the walk. I've been talking the talk for years. So now he's a reserve deputy sheriff.
Right, which is amazing because you just don't see that.
I asked him if he was feeling okay.
Right, right. So. It was one of those days he slipped and hit his head or something like that. What do you think? We're trying to get out. Why are you trying to get in?
So without further ado, I'd like to introduce to everybody Dr. Byron Greenberg. How you doing, Doc?
Doing well. Thanks for inviting me on, guys, and appreciate that introduction. Um, I yeah, you're right, Alan. You did ask me if I needed to talk to somebody when I told you that I was going to do that, and yeah, you said I think you said something like you need a professional, and I said I didn't know where I could find one. So, so, so
And now we're
yeah,
what, 4 or 5 years
yeah.
into it?
Yeah, 5 years in. Yep, been a certified Leo for 5 years. I talked with a friend of mine who most of the time when people have a dual, when they're cops and psychologists, they go from being cops from a number of years and studying people and then getting extremely curious about how they work and why they do what they do, and it draws them in, and they're like, you know what? I'm gonna go back and figure out some things that I just, couldn't get my mind around while I was standing in the blood at that scene. And then they
Hmm.
become forensic psychologists. And one of my dear friends, Wayne Wallace, Dr. Wayne Wallace, who's from Kentucky, just a great guy. I said to him, I called him and I said, Wayne, I said, I know a lot of you guys who, you know, came over to the dark side from law enforcement. And I said, but I don't really, do you know anybody who did it the other way around? And he's, you know, he said, I don't know anybody who went from being a psychologist to being a cop. And I said, why do you imagine that is? And I think he said, because nobody's that bad shit crazy. So,
I was just thinking the exact same
yeah,
thing.
yeah. Alan, your observation, diagnostic skills are intact. I just want you to know
Well, I
that.
appreciate that.
I
Yeah.
needed a professional.
Well, I mean, you have this very impressive resume. And one thing I forgot, I mean, and this contributes to your very busy schedule. You're also an associate professor of clinical psychology at Virginia State University for their master's and PhD programs.
Yeah,
So,
I
yeah,
am.
you're a busy man.
Yeah, yeah. My wife
So,
told me that in order to get everything done in a day, I needed to get up 3 hours before I went to bed. And if you guys can figure out how to help me with that, I appreciate it.
so okay, you've been doing this for a lot of years. How
Mhm.
did you end up with the likes of us? How
Oh
did you end
well,
up talking to cops?
I could joke about that and tease you, but the truth of the matter is I was very, very fortunate because you guys have been a great blessing to me. To see you, to watch you, to see you struggle and to struggle through. There's two things and two things only that motivate people to change. Um, One is inspiration, and the other is desperation.
Mm.
And I challenge anybody to come up with a third reason why people change. Those are the only two that I've seen. And I was in California doing my doctoral work and started working with an agency, the counseling team in Southern California. And I started working with all these cops, and this was shortly after the three strikes law in Southern California, um, where, yeah, third felony was a mandatory 20 years, and judges didn't even have any leeway on their sentencing. And it turned into the Wild West, gentlemen. I'm telling you. It was traffic stop, gun battle after traffic stop, gun battle.
Jeez.
And
Those
yeah, it
guys knew
was
that they get collared, they're done. That's it.
that's it. And if you're 35, 40 years old, you know that a 20-year sentence, what that means if you're going to Folsom or Chino or
Gosh.
Tehachapi, this is not going to be good. And so it was like, you know what, I'd rather just go ahead and take my chances with a gun battle. And these guys were going, I ain't going back. And I was training at three academies out there, the San Diego, some, not much, but mostly at Riverside Sheriff's Academy and San Bernardino's Sheriff's Academy. And I was telling them, in the fear and anger management classes I was teaching, I was like, here's the deal, guys. If you hear I ain't, get it out. This is no longer a traffic stop. This is a gun battle because that's vernacular for draw. And
Right.
these guys were shooting it out at point blank range with people. And I saw
Jeez.
these officers doing all this day in and day out and dealing with it all. And I was going to debrief after debrief, everything. And I was, I was inspired. I was inspired by the level of care and concern that these tough guys and gals showed to the community, and it changed me, and it made me want to be a better person. And I feel like making this decision to be in this profession is exactly what I did. And so you guys did me a solid by showing me something and inspiring me, and I appreciate you for it.
That's
Pretty good.
wonderful. Yeah. So you came back to Virginia,
Yeah,
and
that's where I'm
when
from.
did when did you start working with agencies around here?
Came back in, well, actually, I did my residency back east. When we were out in California, before we went out to California, I was applying to doctoral programs coming out of out of Hopkins, and my wife said any place but California, because she was a flight attendant for U.S. Air at the time, and she was like any place but California. And then I got this great offer at Loma Linda, um, and so I said, well, honey, I'd like to go to Loma Linda, California, and she said, okay, but promise me we're coming back. So I said, okay. So we're out there for 3 years and I'm applying back east and setting up all my plans. And she goes, well, I kind of like it out here now. And I'm like, no, it's too late now. I've already made all those plans. So I ended up doing my residency back in at Spring Grove Hospital Center, Shepherd Pratt Hospital, and back at Johns Hopkins in the medical psych unit back in Baltimore. And so that was coming back to the East Coast back in 98. And then in 99, I moved back down to Virginia because my family and my wife's families were from here. And started my own practice. And I started working for the state because you have to get licensed and you have to work under people to get licensed. So I was working at Central State Hospital, and that was an interesting experience. Worked there for a number of years. I have a lot to say about that, but I probably shouldn't on a
Well, for those that don't
podcast.
know, that is a psychiatric hospital, state-run
Yeah,
psychiatric hospital.
yeah. So I was admitted to the courts as an expert in things like adjudicative competence and insanity after receiving training at University of Virginia's ILPPP, which is the Institute for Law, Public Policy, and Psychiatry. And so I was sent there by the state to be trained, and then was an expert in the courts. But what was the other side of it? So yeah, so we came back here and uh, set up set up our home in Dinwiddie County, where I was originally from, and raised our three kids here. Um, and then now we're at the point where the kids are have flown the coop, and hitting that point where we're empty nesters. So we've been here a
Yeah.
little bit.
Yeah. I'm getting close to that myself. But now I want to ask you. Obviously, you have a tremendous resume and a lot of experience doing this with law enforcement. But I want to be able to offer something for those that are listening. And I do think that one of the most difficult things for an officer or any first responder for that is struggling or having some struggles is one, realizing when they need to go see somebody, and then two, actually making that leap to go actually see somebody.
It's
And
very, very
for the,
difficult.
absolutely, I mean, and I can attest to that from personal experience. But and I make no bones about it. But for you, for what you see, what are the things that if that a first responder is experiencing that really should be the clear indicator that it is time, or they're getting on the cusp of they need to do something now to speak to somebody, to go see somebody, to seek some professional help.
Yeah. Yeah, isn't it interesting the way that you phrased that question? Because you kind of answered it, Danny, with the question, and that is back to the original statement that there's two things that motivate us to change. One of them is
Sure.
inspiration, and you just mentioned the other one, and that is desperation. You're basically saying that a lot of people, and this is true, a lot of people who call me, they call me from a position of desperation. And I think that when you're desperate, you consider alternative solutions. And instead of making it an alternative solution that you consider only under desperation, perhaps the wise thing to do would be to have that service in your pocket and to consider it a possible alternative to struggling, and then allow yourself to be inspired to go when you start to see some of those signs that things are not going well, rather than waiting for desperation. That's my prayer every morning. My prayer is, God, help me to be inspirable, because I know that you love me enough to allow me desperation if that's what I need.
Absolutely. And I mean, just to reiterate that, I do think a lot of that is, like you said, the desperation and the hurdle we're trying to get over is for people to realize that before it comes desperation, to go, hey, something is, I'm not feeling right. But we all talk about the stigma. There's obviously a huge stigma.
It's also,
And,
there's a
and I,
cultural thing here too, and that is, you think about it. The culture of law enforcement has several components to it that are very inhibitory and encouraging somebody to go. One is it's reactive versus proactive. You don't go to a person's house before the burglary. You get the 911 call, and yeah, there's some proactive stuff that we do, but for the most part, we're reactive, not proactive. And the other thing is, the culture is that your identity as a professional is a helper. You're the helper. And so you don't get the help, you give the help. And so just that mindset alone immediately causes you to potentially block going to get help because you're the helper. And
right.
this, and
Yeah.
another thing too, and just to give you a clear example of how that plays itself out, I do these pre-hire psychological evaluations. That's what my dissertation was on, actually. It was on predicting aggression and stress tolerance in police officers from their pre-hire psychological. And for those of you who are listening who took that wonderful test called the MMPI, that was the primary tool that I studied, and I studied it with one of the guys who helped develop it. He was on my dissertation, Alex Caldwell. You guys could look him up. But in any case, when I ask officers in my interview, hey, have you ever been the victim of a crime? If they're pre-sworn guys with 10 years of experience, their immediate knee-jerk reaction is no. I say, have you ever been the victim of a crime? And their immediate response is no. And then I say, have you ever charged anybody with assault on a police officer? And they go, yeah. And I said, well, who was the victim in that? And they're like, I guess me. But that's different. See, this is the statement, but that's different. And you see, the deal is this: when it comes time for you to get help, you don't get help because that's different. That would change things. That's not who I
Right.
am. I'm not the helpee. I'm the helper. That's my identity. And so it's the truth of the matter is, and I'll tell you, gentlemen, this, and this is why another reason why I love you guys so much is because there is a brotherhood. Uh, there is a brotherhood. And the bottom line is that since the eyeball can't see itself, it's doing the seeing. It relies on your fellow officer who loves you and who you love, who if they called 1033, you would drive like a scalded cat on methamphetamine to get to them. And that guy tells you hey, look, man, I see you're struggling. I think you need to go talk to somebody. And you can talk to me, but I don't know if I have the credentials to work through this with you. I'll talk with you, but you need to talk to somebody. And that's been my greatest source of referrals is officers who love their fellow officer. And those are the people who get people to me. And so, since the eye can't see itself, we need to rely on each other to see. And that's one of the reasons why I became, um, so involved in the Virginia Peer Support Association, because I believe in it. I believe that, we turn to each other for support. And sometimes we have to be a little proactive and be a little pushy with our colleagues and people we care about, saying, man, you know, you got to go talk to somebody. But you can't keep struggling on like this. The end game is not looking good. So let, let me help you.
Well,
And
we do have, as you said, that kind of that stigma in the profession, which we here are trying to push back against. But there is that stigma of I can't do that. I can't take that step. And some of it has been the providers themselves. That there are providers that I've dealt with in professional environments that I've been like, so and so's bedside manner is pretty terrible. But
yeah,
That's putting it nicely.
but you, I mean, and this is one of the reasons that I have so much respect for you is you don't have that problem. And I know I think I've referred a number of people to you
you have
to the point the my PayPal address for the finder's fee. Um, they,
a mission, man.
but they come back and go, he's really different. He's
Yeah.
really different. They went in with all these preconceived notions about what that clinical experience would be, and they come back and like, wow, that I I actually enjoyed myself. I'm you know, and
We played
that's
poker,
just
we drank
different to me.
whiskey. It was awesome. Thanks for sending them. Yeah. No, I appreciate you sending the people that you sent, and I don't think I've ever said thank you for that, Alan, because the truth of the matter is quite honestly, the people that you've sent to me have made me a better person. And that to me is just you know, part and parcel of why I do this. Like you said, there are clinicians that I think that they're well-meaning. I think that they're good people, whatever that means. But I was telling you guys before we started, the tape roll on here that oftentimes people in my profession who have the sense of, and it's an important thing, this unconditional positive regard. We believe that, people are redeemable, and I believe that people are redeemable. The problem is that some people believe that you can pick up a turd by the clean end. And when you're a therapist and you believe that, that may make you very, very effective with certain groups of people, but it will not make you effective with cops who recognize that there's a line, and once the line is crossed, it's crossed. And so, um, yeah, and I'm a hybrid. And the truth of the matter is um, I get pushback from psychologists. The psychologists push back on me. When I go to conference and I present, I have some very interesting conversations with people. Um, but as you could probably tell just from listening to me, I'm not, you can't bully me. I won't get bullied. And they don't, and when they try to do that, even at conference, they realize, oh, this guy's, a little bit more assertive than the typical psychologist. And so again, I think the biggest compliment I ever got was I was in Southern California, and an officer had um, he had got into a fight with a guy, and these two officers were fighting with him, and the guy got one of the officers' gun, and he shot the other officer. And then the other officer shot and killed the guy. Um, but because he took the gun of the other officer. In any case, I drove all over San Diego County with that guy. Captain Malone was his name. And he was driving me back to San Diego to the substation because he picked me up and driven me. And in the car, getting ready to get out. I've been with him all day long, going to the house of the officer who was shot, to the hospital to debrief the officer bedside, and then back to the officer whose gun got away from him and who got shot. The guy got shot. And I'm debriefing all day long, and then we're sitting in the parking lot, and he just looked at me, very serious guy, the captain. He said, "I feel sorry for you." And I was kind of taken back by that. I said, "Well, what do you mean, sir?" And he said, "Well," he said, "I can tell." He said, "You're too much like a cop to be accepted by psychologists." He said, "But you're still just a psychologist."
Mm.
And I chewed on that all the way home, man. I chewed on that all the way home. I realized it was actually a compliment from that guy. So yeah,
Well,
it's difficult to get people.
I would
Go
definitely
ahead.
say you have a unique way to relate. I mean, of course, I've worked for a couple of different agencies, so I've been through pre-hires, and you've done pre-hire for agencies I've been with. So, and then I've been
Yeah,
through
the
in
fact
front
that
of
they
some
hired you,
others.
Denny, means that yeah, it means they don't always take my advice. But yeah,
I was just saying, I'm mailing you the 100. I'm mailing you the hundo. The check's in the mail. But having that, I've had that experience with others because there's obviously other psychologists in the area, and there is a difference. And I don't want to, right, wrong, or indifferent. I don't want to say that somebody else's approach is wrong, but I do think yours is much more relatable. I feel like when we talk and when we sit down and we get into that professional setting, it's still almost like this right here. It's just like a regular conversation. I'm talking, but we are. It's I don't know. It's weird. It's like we're addressing and we're kind of getting to some issues, but in a roundabout way where I don't feel like it's that I'm sitting in a leather chair with my feet propped up and going. So tell me how things were with your dad when you were
don't give
five,
it away
going to
too
the ball
much
game.
there, Denny. Don't give it away too much to these people. Because what's going to happen is that somebody's going to show up and sit in my chair and go, "Are you doing it to me now? Are you doing it to me now?" Because I'm not doing anything.
I don't feel
No,
anything. I don't feel anything.
no, and I don't. I mean, it's not like a smoke and mirrors, but because it's just a natural conversation. It's a very.
There's a flow.
It is.
There's a flow.
It is. It's just the environment. It's very different approach. It's a relatable conversation where some I feel like I've been from. Like this guy doesn't know anything other than what that book told him. Or I'm thinking this guy is probably going to be like, when can I get this kid out of my office?
I appreciate that. That's comforting to know that I'm having that impact. I tell you though, when I was leaving Hopkins, I had a, um, a professor. Her name was Debbie Karen. She's actually a statistician. And she said to me, she said, "Byron," she said, "as you leave here, I've got three pieces of advice for you. And I'll share this three pieces of advice with your listenership here." She said, "First of all," she said, "don't take yourself too seriously." And I think you gentlemen can attest that I don't. Uh, Life has got too many really serious, dead serious issues for me to be taking myself too seriously all the time. So don't take yourself too seriously. She said, second of all, she said, don't date or marry somebody who has more problems than you do. Now, that's some sound advice.
Yeah.
That's
And then
damn
last,
good advice right there.
and she was a
Holy,
statistician. She wasn't even a clinician. That's the great thing about that. But the last thing that she said is, she said, She said, "Don't analyze your family or your friends over cocktails." And
Mm.
I don't do that. Um,
Yeah.
when it comes time, yeah, when it comes time to ask the questions that need to be asked to help people uncover what's really bugging them, that's what I do. And I think I
Yeah.
know cops well enough to kind of know how to ask the question to get them to the point where they're seeing things without feeling like somebody's judging them or kind of coming at them with some accusation because the truth of the matter is there's a lot of minefields in this profession that most people you don't even hit all the mines in your career, but there are so many. But most people find the mines from the loud noise. And it's, if a person like you guys and what you're doing here can give people a heads up on where some things are, all the better. But when they do get blown up, um, it's good for them to have a place that they can go and talk about it and uh, and learn from it, most importantly, to learn from it. And at that point, you're not you haven't failed. And so that's the thing I hope that people leave my office having learned from something. And then you know what? Even if even if you fall down, the key is fall down and get up in the direction of the good goal, and do that from the day
Mm.
that you leave
Yep.
the womb till the day that you hit the tomb. And that's
Mm.
that's living. That's living.
Mm.
Sorry to get so serious, guys.
You, hey, hang on one second. I think if we could, I'd like to take a short break and then we'll jump into more discussion if that's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, let me take a short break here. So lately, we've had a lot of folks ask us, hey guys, how can we help support the podcast? Well, there's a lot of ways you can do that. And first is wherever you're listening to Badge of the Bone, whatever platform you're using, make sure to follow us. That's a huge help. Also, go over to our Facebook page and make sure to like and follow us there. Another way you can support the podcast is through a monetary donation. If you notice in the descriptions to each episode, there's a link that says support this podcast. Click that link and you can make a monetary donation as small or as big as you like. You can also make it reoccurring. Any amount is helpful and we are appreciative. And the last way you can support the podcast is through our Badge of the Bone podcast store. The link for that is located on our Facebook page and on our website, badgeofthebone.com. And we've actually got some pretty cool stuff on the store. We've got t-shirts, we've got hoodies, stickers, we've got tumblers. The tumblers are great. I take my tumbler everywhere. It's awesome. Take a look at and purchase something. Anything you get helps support this podcast. It helps us keep this thing going. So thanks so much. But let's get back to the show. All right. Back from a short break.
Yeah. So, Doc, you have been at this working with law enforcement now for over two decades. So, you've worked in Virginia, you worked in California. You've seen an evolution, if you will. I guess, how do I want to phrase this? Where do you see us, the folks on the job, and our mental health and the types of things we are dealing with now compared to, say, 20 years ago?
It's a good question. Of course, I have to kind of uh, put a filter on it because, you know, what I saw 20 years ago was through less mature eyes. And so
Mm,
some of the things that was was there, I may not have seen that are there today that I now see. And it doesn't mean that they're appearing now, but weren't existing then, because I've
mhm.
matured in the process. And I've been working with law enforcement since 1995. And so next year, I think that'll mark 30.
Yeah.
Um, Man, shit.
I'm not going to say
I
it.
didn't really think about it until just now, man. That's messed up. Yeah, but the truth is that uh, The struggle um, is the same, and that is, um, it's kind of what Rudyard Kipling said in his poem, If. He said, "If you can keep your head when all about you are losing theirs and blaming it on you. If you can trust yourself when all men doubt you, but make allowance for their doubting too." And I think that that's kind of the challenge for us in this profession. Um, you know, you I tell people all the time, you're out there. I work in Dinwiddie County, and I had a little bit of an injury, and so I've been out for the last couple months. But I tell people, look, when you get out there on the road in Dinwiddie County, it's 508 square miles, and if there's 4 or 5 people on the road, yeah, we got our state buddies out there. But the truth of the matter is you're alone. You've got to be thinking on your feet. And you've got to be defensive as well as offensive. And so I don't think that that's changed in this profession. I do think what's changed in this profession is the public has been um, more aggressive towards us because I believe that the media has been weaponized at some level against the concept of authority. And I believe that officers become the icons uh, for authority. And so when the public is, you know, anti-authority, they're going to be anti-you. And at the point that we bend to that at some level, um, well, it's gonna get really bad. I'll give you a quick example of what I mean by this. And I was working at a hospital, a state hospital that was a forensic hospital, but I won't mention which one. And near somewhere in central Virginia, south of Richmond. But I won't mention the name of the hospital. And when I started working there, we were the state of Virginia was being sued by the Department of Justice because patients were dying in that hospital, and it happened to be a forensic hospital, and so there were people who were remanded to the custody of the Commissioner of Mental Health by the Department of Justice because they were found not guilty by reason of insanity or adjudicated not competent to stand trial, and they were sent there to be made competent. People were dying, getting injured, and so the Commonwealth of Virginia was being sued when I first got there in '99. And long story short is that the patients started really, really getting violent after that. And I had the director of mental health for all for the state hospitals walk up to me at a conference, and I was new to the hospital, and he said, "Hey, how's it going down there?" And I was a little concerned because he knew my name, and he was kind of at the top of the food chain, and so I didn't, it's like he knew my name. That's probably not good. And he introduced himself to me, and I said, "I know who you are." He said, "How's it going down there?" I said, "Well," I said, the truth of the matter is if you want to know what's going on at the top of the hospital, just take a look at what's happening at the bottom of the hospital." And he knew that it was violent. And so he looked at me and said, "What do you mean by that?" I said, "Well, the guy Irving Yalom, who wrote the book on group, basically made that statement. And here's what it means. It means that all of the authority from all of the people in the mental health department has been taken from them by the Department of Justice. And those people at the top of that have taken the authority from all of the directors of the hospitals, who have taken authority, robbed authority from all the people at the top of management, who've robbed authority from all the middle managers, who then took all of the authority away from the frontline people to provide services to the patients. And I said, and the problem is that the patients, recognizing that the people who are supposed to be benevolently in charge over them don't have any power or authority. And so they are acting out. They are fighting and hurting people in order to force people at my level to demonstrate that we have benevolent authority so that they can feel safe. And so when you start saying that the police don't have any authority because you've robbed it all the way up the food chain, the public's going to act out to force the police to demonstrate that they have authority so that they can feel safe. And that's what you're seeing now, I think. You're seeing more and more of that. And the more we try and defund the police and do all these shenanigans and rob and make the police feel like, everybody's going to micromanage them and after the play quarterback it and look backwards and judge them. It's kind of like an officer told me, you don't get in trouble for the stop you don't make. And
Yeah.
at the point that when more and more officers act like that, the public's going to end up acting out to force us to do something in order to show that we have benevolent control and that they're safe. It's a long way to say it, but that's the dynamic that I see playing itself out today that I didn't see back then.
I guess the only counterpoint that I might make to that is
Oh,
that
good.
from an end user standpoint, it didn't feel like, I mean, there was certainly that aspect of you don't have any authority, because I think you have a culture that's developed within the profession that you have very centralized leadership, because that person at the top is desperately afraid that something's going to roll back on them. So they
Right.
attempt to, grip everything and everyone as tightly as possible.
Hmm.
But with regards to your metaphor, I think it's more of, oh, those guys, those officers, they have the authority. They're just abusing it.
Mm, right. Well,
And
yeah.
I don't
Hmm.
know if that changes the paradigm.
No, but that's just the point, and that is, um, if I know, see, I can, it's, um, it's a self, it, it's a bias, and the bias is I can find what I look for. If I look for it, I can find it. If I want to see abusiveness in, in the police, all I have to do is just sit around and wait, and I can find it. It reminds me what you're describing, though. It kind of reminds me. I'm working on a documentary, and I went to the Tribeca Film Festival a few years back when they rolled out this film called Cop Watch. And I don't know, some dude, I guess he lives in his mom's basement, just smokes a lot of weed and has one of those GoFundMe accounts where he gets people to send him money so he can buy video cameras and give them to inner city kids and say, hey, I'm going to make you a movie star if you just, are a great producer, if you just get me some footage of cops doing bad stuff.
I was just going to ask if
And
this is related to the organization, but apparently it sounds like it is.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, they got
it's,
a lot
and
of stuff on
so,
YouTube.
yeah. And so what do they do? To give these things out to these, and a lot of them I think got hawked, which is kind of funny. But I went to the premiere of the show Cop Watch, and all they did was they played those videos that were already made the news, and then none of the video footage that they got out of the thousands and thousands of hours of people videoing the cops. But what they did get was they got cops, cursing at them, get the fuck back and stuff like that, which looks ugly, just looks ugly. But if I run up to you when you're in the middle of fighting with somebody, and gentlemen, you guys are got the uniform on, and you're struggling to get some handcuffs on somebody who's done something wrong and who doesn't want to capitulate. He's
Hmm.
decided he doesn't recognize your authority and he doesn't want to capitulate. And so you're fighting with him. If I run up to you and I put a camera on you, but just before I say turn the camera on, I go, what are you doing? And then I get close, I get in your space, and then I turn the camera on, you're gonna turn around and you're gonna end up being ugly with me. And that sells. That sells because it gets people to say, see, there they go again, abusing their authority because look at that man being so ugly with me, and he's got the authority to hurt me. And so that type of stuff it's not hard, um, to get people to find that thing that they're doing wrong. Listen, if I follow you around in your car, and you guys can attest to this. Listen, I carry a credential, but you know what? When you pull up behind me in one of your marked units, I get a little sphincter tightening.
Hmm.
It's just going to happen because I immediately, in my business, we call it an externalized superego. The externalized superego just showed up in uniform, and now I have to pay attention to if I'm doing something wrong because somebody else is watching. And that observation of self makes me a little uncomfortable, and it reminds me that I don't have all the power and authority, and some people get very, very, I don't know, they get a certain have a certain feeling about that, and, um, and they look for the negative that you do. I mean, how many times have you stopped somebody, Denny, and them say, "Well, I see you speeding all the time.
Oh,
I
like
see you
you said,
guys speeding all the time."
I know you guys
Yeah,
speed
yeah,
by me the other
exactly.
day. I mean,
Right. You
yeah.
see, and the deal is that it's I don't want to be underneath this authority, and I'm gonna end up, making excuses, and basically the first thing to do is to demonize you, and that ultimately should rob you of your authority by doing that, and, that's the first step. You're a bad guy, and therefore you have no moral turpitude, no moral right to be an authority.
Mm.
That's the first step,
Yeah.
and that's one of the big struggles right now. So that's
It
why we all
feels
have
like
to be on
that
our
has
toes. And
gotten it feels like that's gotten worse in the
I
last
think it has.
several years.
Yeah.
I think it has too. It has. Um, but again, I think I think we live in a time, not to wax biblical, but we live in a time where man is calling the truth a lie and the lie a truth, and seeking teachers that teaches him what he wants to believe. And and even people in academia in the ivory tower are are doing what Shakespeare said. They're twisting the truth to make a trap for fools. And it's a challenge because everybody wants you to speak the truth until you speak the truth about them, and then you're an asshole.
Mm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I've thought about a lot, particularly coming off like the COVID pandemic, for example,
Mm.
was just not just the profession, but just talking broadly as a country. We are batshit crazy.
Off the
Job
And
security,
rails.
bro.
here I am 50 years old, and there's always been crazy. Crazy has always been there. Americans, hey, we're a little crazier than most. That's fine. It's part of our charm. But it's like, what the hell happened?
I mean, it's like Doc said, you know, it's turning upside down. It's the evildoers are becoming the good guys, and the good guys are being made as the evildoers, and it's flipping. And the things that are wrong are now becoming right, and you have to accept them. The things that are right are turning into wrong, and it's a bad time.
Yeah.
Well, if you go look at all of the movies, and what you'll see is you'll see that the heroes are anti-heroes. They're like lovable bad people, and they do bad stuff. And you know what, I knew that we were in for it. I knew that we actually there was a little bit of a we started heading down this road, I think, in the 80s. And there was this one moment, and I was an undergrad in psychology at Virginia Commonwealth, and I went into the Commons, and I was in the Commons with some fraternity brothers, and we were meeting for some libations, and I was sitting there doing a little homework, and Magnum PI was on. Magnum PI, man. This guy who was, this handsome, robust, good guy, nice to old people and children. Everybody loved Magnum. Well, nothing would do no wrong, right? Guy would do no wrong. Well, the story was he he was a Vietnam vet, and this guy, Ivan, I think, he ran into him on one of the islands on the Big Island, and he recalled him torturing his friend to death, and he got him alone, and he had a gun on him, and the guy was going, I know you won't do it. You're a good man." And everybody in the room was screaming, "Do it." I mean, I'm in the
Shoot
comments, and
him!
everybody's going, "Kill him, shoot him," because he was so bad. But we all knew that he wouldn't do it because he was Magnum PI, the guy was unarmed, and that would be murder. And all of a sudden, he raises his gun and he shoots and kills him
Mhm,
in cold blood.
mhm,
And I knew that something happened because everybody in that room got quiet. I
mhm.
knew it. It shocked them because the good guy did the wrong thing. And it took about 30 seconds of silence before everybody went, "Hey," and I knew something had changed.
Mm.
Mm. Man.
I knew something had changed. And so I think that, this has been happening a little bit, a lot of the time. And it's kinda like the frog in the water that you put on the stove. The frog doesn't know that he's slowly boiling, and we've been getting a lot of messages from the media and messages from the media that this is the way it is. Now we're at the point where we're telling the emperor that his invisible coat is beautiful, and we're not even batting an eye at it.
Mm.
Yep,
That
yep.
that to me is,
Mhm.
like, that's very concerning, because the person who points out, like the little kid who said, "Hey, what's going on with the fat naked dude?" That kid got abused by everybody because the kid pointed out that everybody else was living in Fantasyland.
Yep.
And if you go and
Man, that's just
you tell them that this is the way it is, and you point out the truth to them. Like I said, everybody wants you to speak the truth as long as it's not about them. And then all of a sudden, you're the bad guy.
Mhm.
So yeah, we're living in some interesting times, gentlemen. There's no question about it.
mm,
And a lot of people trying to work the job in these interesting times.
It is.
So obviously, like we're Gen Xers,
Yeah.
and now the people coming on the job, and you know, I don't have anything close to your academic credentials. I'm not going to pretend that I do, but a lot of my background was sociology, and that's still where a lot of my interest lies. Is that and the difference in groups of people, and you see that there's these major generational differences, right? So my oldest kid is Gen Z. That generation could not be any farther removed from Gen X if they were on the edge of the solar system.
Right.
And my
Right.
youngest is, I didn't even know this was a thing, Gen Alpha. I don't know what the hell that is.
Gen Alpha?
Got
Again,
me
I
on that
don't
one,
know
man.
what the hell that
The
is.
hell is Gen Alpha,
I
man?
have no idea.
Guess we're starting all over again.
But, there's
Yeah.
my oldest is 16, and so there's people 5 years older than her that starting the job. You know, how are you seeing that they're better equipped for the job or yeah. I'm guessing the answer is no by the look you just
Yeah, yeah.
I was
No, I think, I do all these pre-hires, and the truth of the matter is,
Mhm.
you know, a lot of times in my report, I say to the department, "This person will do most of their growing up on the job."
mm,
They
Oh,
have
yeah.
they have the capabilities of doing it, but they're immature, and, it's gonna take but I tell you, the job will put you in a position where you will be desperate, and that's one of the things that causes change,
Mhm.
desperation. And it's like,
Mhm.
it's like the American Indians used to teach their kids how to swim by throwing them in the water. And hey,
Mhm.
swim or don't swim, and these young people are getting out there. I've seen some uh I've seen some crumbled by the job. I've seen it hurt people, and I try and select people who are robust enough to, they have the stuff to do it, um, but sometimes they just choose not to, and the job can break you. I
Mm-hmm.
just wish the public could truly understand, and I know a lot of your listeners are cops,
Mm-hmm.
but I just wish the public could truly uh, understand um, what it is to walk in your shoes. There's a poem that I quoted. I was asked to come and speak uh, at a memorial for uh, Bates and Cullen, the state troopers who died in that uh, helicopter crash up in
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Charlottesville. And and I started with this poem. I walked a mile with pleasure. She chatted all the way, but left me none the wiser for all she had to say. I walked a mile with sorrow. In narrow words said she, but oh, the things I learned from her when sorrow walked with me. And in this job, you're going to learn a lot. And you can, if you choose, you can create a moratorium on all of it and then do what a lot of the people you guys know do. Is they retire and live 5 years and they die because it all
Mm-hmm.
catches up with them. That's a very sad thing to me. I shouldn't even joke about it because I think it's very sad. They watch TV for 5 years, and that's a euphemism for getting a security job, and and then they die because it all catches up with them. Some people will deal with it. Some people will medicate it away.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some people will use all sorts of vices to try and distract themselves from the discomfort. But then other people leverage it, harness it, and use it to motivate them to be better people, wiser, more insightful, more caring. Um, they hug their kids a little bit tighter when they get home. Uh, I work with a state trooper who said to me, and this is in the publication that I'm working on, he said, I remember every death notification that I did. He said, I remember one in particular. He said, I remember the cracks in the concrete stairs as I approached the door, the way that the screen door hung, and its sound when it closed after I knocked. I remember the mother coming to the door, but I heard a little boy say, "There's Daddy now." He said, I knew that I was not his daddy, but I was there to tell him that his daddy was never coming home. And he said, I remember her coming to the door, looking down at him, thinking she should probably shoo him away, but afraid to do so, as if to do it would be to invoke the very news that she so desperately did not want to hear. He said, later on that day, I got home and my son, the same age, crawled in my lap. And I thought to myself, what will his life be when they come to tell him that his daddy wasn't coming home? That shit tore me up.
I bet it's tough.
Yeah, that tore
That's
me up.
yeah.
Um,
You know,
but I've seen plenty of that in the last 30 years, and and I've seen that you guys are willing to carry the heavy end and to do it in the dark without people seeing it. And so, sorry to interrupt you, Denny.
No.
no, I was just going to say, that it struck me on a story where he was remembering some very finite details of that incident. I find sometimes with me, because there's certain events that I remember that are stuck, that I just pop up a lot. But it's weird. There's details that I feel like I should be able to see and remember, but I just don't. An incident that I know has just burned into me but there's certain details that for some reason I can't remember.
I can relate to that, and I will say this. I cannot remember the face of a single fatality I worked.
For
Whether it was
you.
a pardon?
That's a good for you.
No, I don't know.
That's a good thing. That's good. I'm glad. But let me just say this to you, Alan. You say you can't remember it, but what's going to happen is this. You're going to see someone in a Walmart or a Costco or at a theater or at a bar, and their face is going to look like that person. And that's going to be what we call the retrieval cue.
Mm,
That's going to pull out of your unwilling memory that face. And you're going to be bugged by it. You're not going to know why because your brain's still trying to get rid of it. But you're going to be bugged by it and not know why you're having an emotional reaction.
mm.
And your wife's going to end up seeing you act a little bit differently and go, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" And you're not going to be able to tell her what's wrong
That's okay.
because
She
you
already
don't
thinks I'm
know.
batshit crazy. So.
But it's like, if I'll give you a quick example how this works. If I drive around with you in Chesterfield, Denny, um, we'll go through a neighborhood and you'll see, yep, at this intersection, there was a 3 fatality, crash, and
Mhm,
over in that house over there was a Boy Scout leader who was a pedophile, and we
mhm,
arrested him, and he's doing 30 years, and we're gonna go down the road a little bit, you're gonna say, "Oh, yeah, I remember, we got into a chase, I exited my car right over
mhm,
there, I parked by that bush, and I took off running," and I was like, "Now I'm gonna let the younger guys catch this dude," and you're gonna end up having these memories, but those memories are gonna be prompted by the retrieval queue of the place. That's going to be enough of a retrieval queue. But here's the deal, and that is there's some memories that you kind of repress and bury because they're just uncomfortable. But what will happen is you won't think of it forever, and then you'll be at that intersection at that time of day when the thing happened in the season when it happened, and it's going to be the similar temperature, and the sun will be at the same place with the right shadows, and you'll smell the honeysuckle that you smelled that day too. All of that stuff will be so powerful in its memory queue that it'll pull the ugliest memory out that happened at that moment at that time. And it will be a memory that you repressed and put away, but it will be pulled out and it'll be very disturbing to you at how vivid it is because all those retrieval cues pulled it out for you. And it made it much more vivid because your brain is an associationistic machine. It associates. I'll give you a quick example of that, guys. And that is if I say, now I've got an image in my head, a little game here. I got an image in my head. And if I say the word yellow, what's the first thing that pops into your head, guys? Say yellow.
Yellow traffic light.
What do you say,
l-
Alan?
lemons. I don't know.
Okay, okay, fine. That's fine. Okay, no, it's just that's right. So it's just a single descriptor. Can't get so now I say yellow bird. What
Mhm.
pops into your head?
Tweety bird.
Tweety bird.
So now I had in my head Tweety Bird. Now, do you know how many different yellow birds there are? There are thousands of yellow birds. How is it that you guys got the same image in your head when I only gave you 2 descriptors, yellow bird? Why didn't you say big bird? Okay. Why don't you say, a yellow cuckoo? Why didn't you say a chicken? No, you said what I had in my head, and you did it because that's the thing that you most associate, your brain has most associated with that outcome, with that answer. And what happens is when you have just 2 cues, you can get what's in my head. What if you have 50 cues? Yellow small bird that sings. It's like if I start giving you a bunch of cues, it's much more vivid,
Mm.
and that's what happens to you, and you know what's gonna happen? You guys are gonna be old and walking around on canes, and you're gonna have not thought of something terrible, but it's going to come back to you because for some reason, a bunch of those cues against your will are gonna be in the environment, and and that's the thing that most people don't get about this profession, and that is one of your primary responsibilities is to be a storage device for memories that nobody wants. It's a huge burden, much bigger than you think, and you carry it for a society that doesn't really understand it, doesn't recognize that they don't have to carry those memories because you're doing it for them. And and so, yeah, um, the public doesn't get it, and some of us don't even get it. You know, there's no reason for you to think of those faces, Denny,
Yeah,
because you weren't responsible for what happened. You just
that makes
fulfilled your
sense.
responsibility to them at that time. And part of that is you're going to
Yeah.
have to hold on to some of that.
Hmm. Now, I know we've been going for about an hour now here. I did want to kind of come back, I guess, to for first responders. We've touched on that, and we've touched on they come seek help when that desperation moment, and we're storing all these bad things that happen. And I'm treading lightly, I guess, because I don't want to be so direct with the question. I guess is being that typically the officers generally are not coming on their own until things have gotten pretty significant. Do you think there should be something that's, I don't want to say mandated, but worked into the system where, first responders are coming? And I know it's tough because if you tell somebody they have to go, it's the roll of the eyes and I got to do the fucking mental health check bullshit, and it gets thrown up to that. But if you
Yeah. No, I
don't,
get it. I get
then
it. No,
everything
I,
builds
I
up,
think
and then
you're
they get to the point where they gotta
right.
go, and they're a
Right.
total mess, and the trains come off the rails. It's on fire, and
Yeah. No, I think you're right. I think ideally, look, ideally we should have a physical fitness, check, a physical check every year. I mean, the bottom line is, um, this job, you can get out of shape driving around all day with a big burst of adrenaline, big burst of adrenaline, which jacks up your glycemic index and slams you so that you need to reach for some high carb food to give you your energy back, and you keep doing that over and over again throughout the day, you'll add a lot of weight, and so I think you get out of shape, and if you get out of shape, you know what? You can get killed. And I think that that's a fact. But I think what's even more of a fact is that you're 3 times more likely to kill yourself than you are to be killed by the public, and
Mm.
I think we ignore that at our great peril.
yes,
We ignore it at our great peril.
And
And so
unfortunately, I think we've seen a sharp statistical rise in that
yeah,
Mhm.
in the last 5 to 10 years alone.
Yeah, I think it's been I think, it feels like it's sharp because we're paying attention to it. I think it's been there, and I think that we've not done as good of a job because, an officer who has a accident,
mm,
doesn't get the check box,
Mm.
that this wasn't an accident. So yeah, but I do think that, I think that the big problem here, the big rub is if I said mandatory wellness checks, and then because there's so few people who do what I do,
yeah,
I put a couple of people in there who believe that you can pick up a turd by the clean end,
Mhm.
in to do those wellness checks.
yeah,
I think we'd have an insurrection on our hands for the rank and file. Um, you
Yeah.
know, so I mean, I think that that's the rub. You got to have the right people doing it because, and here's the other thing too, and that is if you don't know this profession, a lot of stuff that you guys do on a regular basis looks pathological. But it's not.
I don't know what you're talking
It,
about.
yeah, 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 yeah. But you can't lean like, if you lean over your backyard fence there, Denny, and tell your CPA neighbor that you had to drag somebody out of their car by their throat and throttle the shit out of them because they were, your CPA neighbor will go back in the house and go, "Martha, these people beside us are so violent." And they don't realize, well, you had to do that because the guy was reaching for something and you didn't want to die today, but you didn't explain all that because he couldn't be there to see what that threat was like. And so, the same holds true, when you sit down with a clinician who doesn't understand it. I say if you're going to be a clinician in this business, you should have to do a certain number of ride-alongs before you even can be considered for it. But yeah, this is what you have to remember. This is what you have to do. This is what you have to hold on to, and this becomes a chapter in your life, a chapter in the book of who you are and all you are as an individual, as a unique collection of memories. Um, I would like to share one thing. I know that we're kind of getting close to the end of time, and if there's one little gift that I can give your listeners, I'd like to give this gift to them um, out of the honest affection that I have for them if they're a first responder. Um, and that is, I do this little trick. I like to do it. I'm probably giving something up. I won't be able to do this trick anymore, but I like to go into a classroom full of detectives and I like to ask how many of them are wearing watches. And most of them will raise their hand, even to this day, who are wearing watches. And I'll say, okay, turn it over so you can't tell me what time it is. And they do. And I say, all right, take out a piece of paper and draw the face of that watch. None of them can do it. None of them can do it.
Hmm.
It's very interesting. They put Roman numerals where they're just, lines. They put, Seiko where it's quasar, and I see Alan looking at his watch now. Don't worry, I'm not going to ask you to do that, Alan. So don't
What?
don't try and cheat it. Don't cheat it.
I was like, I don't even know how to tell time.
I know, but
I worked for the
it's
state.
yeah, I love it. Yeah, I are a student. But what happens is I ask them, "Hey, draw the face of the watch," and they can't do it. And then I say, "Hey, can you imagine me having you under cross-examination on the stand?" I'm the defense attorney, and I say, Detective Dennis, you said by your own admission you look at that watch 100 times a day, but you can't even remember whether it has Roman numerals on it. Uh, you, you said that, and then you said by your report here that you saw my client one time, and you described him as a 6'2" Caucasian male wearing a John Deere baseball cap turned 45 degrees to the right, wearing a Jesus Saves T-shirt, blue jeans rolled up 2 times, Converse tennis shoes with red laces, carrying a 1911 45 caliber in his right hand, and a bottle of stolen Jack Black in his left hand. You saw my client one time and you remember all those details, but you look at your watch 100 times a day and don't even know whether it has Roman numerals on it? I don't think so. No further questions, Your Honor.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So it's kind of impeaching your ability to remember something. But then and when I do that, I get a lot of, uh-ohs, looks. But here's the thing, gentlemen. You're not looking at the watch to tell what it looks like. You're looking at it to
Mhm.
see what time it is. The intent that you look at something determines what you remember. It's the intention. And what I would say to you is this: your job is to look for bad things happening and to fix them. And so you spend your life looking for the bad and remembering it. And that makes you a repository for a lot of bad memories. And so what I like to encourage the officers that I encounter to do is for every bad thing you see, every ugly thing, every broken thing you see, find 2 good things, 2 uplifting things, 2 beautiful things, 2 things that have a good report, that are positive and uplifting, and then remember them intentionally, purposefully with the one bad thing. And if you do that, by the time they get to where you guys are, they'll have twice as many good memories as they do bad memories. And anytime they enter that intersection, at that time of day, when the light is such, the shadows are this, the smell of honeysuckle, and that bad memory gets kicked into your conscious awareness, it will, by its very nature, force two good memories into your conscious awareness too. And and I think that that's the way that we save our souls in this job. That's the way that we come out of it better people by intentionally and proactively doing that.
It's good.
Well, that is really one of the primary reasons that we do this podcast is to hopefully save one person.
Mm.
And it has been a tremendous honor having you on as somebody who really walks the walk every day. So thank you.
Yep. Thank you so much. It's been awesome. Finally getting to do this recording.
Yeah, my great pleasure, gentlemen. Always, if there's anything that I can do for you, um, or to do for your listenership, I consider it a great privilege to be a servant of servants.
Well, I know you have a number of projects in the works right now. The documentary, I know you're working on a book. I would love
Editing
it if you
now.
would come back and yeah, I would love it if you would come back and share that
Sure.
with us once that's done and out there. But again, we really appreciate it, and you're sitting here as I'm looking at the screen, and you're just labeled Doc, and I got to thinking while we were talking, we had a former sergeant from California on with us last season, wrote a book called Relentless Courage, Michael Suguru, and wrote a book with his provider.
Yep.
And in the book, he identifies her always as Doc, and Doc is a term of respect and endearment. And if we call you Dr. Greenberg, we probably don't love you or trust you. But if we just call you Doc, you know, we respect you, we love you, we trust you, and so we've always called you Doc. So
Appreciate that, guys. Okay. Thanks for inviting me on, um, and again, if there's anything I can do for you guys, don't hesitate to call on me.
all right, well, um, where can they find our audience find you if they want to utilize your
Sure.
practice?
They can look me up at www. C as in car, O as in Oscar, P as in Paul, D as in David, R as in red.com. www.copdoctor.com.
Very good.
All right, again, Dr. Byron Greenberg, thank you so much.
Thanks, Doc. Good to see you.
Good to see
All right.
That was a long time coming, but
Man, it was
certainly worth it.
yeah, we really for a long time been trying to get him on.
And it's and I'm not I bust Doc's balls, but he is really busy.
No, no doubt. And he's does so much. I mean,
Yeah, I mean he's got, aside from having an active family life, he's got a very active practice.
he teaches
He's teaching. He's doing this documentary that he's working
peer support
on.
association.
Peer support. I mean, yeah, he is really in the trenches.
Absolutely. But a great talk.
Yeah, I think it's something we really could have gone
Yeah,
a lot longer.
we definitely could have talked
We
for quite a while.
probably could have solved all of the universe's problems.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's just so much to it, and he has so much perspective. You know, we don't have the time to ask all the questions. So,
Mhm.
maybe at some other time he comes back, or even for a few minutes, and we kind of
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I hold him up there, and part of the reason I wanted him to come on to the show was, if somebody is reluctant to go get help,
that's the biggie.
there are it's as good as Doc is. There's other people that are doing what he does.
There are. I mean,
And we've talked about this on the show before, not every provider is the right fit for
right, because
you.
as much as we like Doc Greenberg, he may not be the fit for you.
Right.
So, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just finding that fit. It's finding that person that you feel comfortable with talking about the things that are going. And it's difficult conversations, but
you can find those people.
Yes, you can.
And I think Doc is a great example that you can go in and you can just lay it all out
Yes.
there.
Absolutely.
And he's not going to be like, we're going to need that rubber room down here. I mean,
Right. Right.
I mean,
You don't see him get up from there and go to the
No.
go to the back closet there and pull out a bottle of whiskey and be like, "Hold on, let me get a little bit of this before you continue on."
and I did, when he said, "Hey, Al, I'm going to take a leave of absence from the practice, and I'm going to go to the police academy." And I said, "What is wrong with you?"
Well,
he goes, "Well," and his exact words were, I've talked the talk for long enough, and it's time I walk the walk." And yeah, I thought he was crazy. I mean, but I think he put his money where his mouth was, and that speaks volumes that he was willing to kind of step into that arena.
Well, now, I remember that because actually, that is when I went to go see him, and it was hard to get an appointment.
Yeah.
Because he was so busy with that. But I got in, he got me in, and I remember him telling me that, and I was like, "Why would you do that?"
You had a good thing here.
I'm here because I do that type of stuff. Who are you going to talk to?
Exactly.
So, but I think that is really awesome. I do, and all jokes aside, I mean, we joke kid with that, but I think there's an extreme value to that. And I'd almost like to talk to him again about his perspective of, he already had a great perspective with dealing with LEOs and first responders, but now having gone to the academy, I'd love to, pick his brain a little bit on that. But has it been any different? Has he seen some changes?
Oh, I'd love to bring him back on just to talk about transitioning out of the job.
Oh yeah, see, that's another good one. So,
which hopefully we're going to be talking some more about that this season.
Yeah.
Whether it be for retirement or other reasons, but just again, a wealth of knowledge. Really glad he was able to show up, and really, it took 3 seasons.
But he finally got it.
But we got it, and it's great, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. Again, he is at Greenberg and Associates, located in Colonial Heights in Central Virginia. Easy to find, but just a provider that gets it.
Yeah, and I will say, if you're thinking, maybe I should give him a call, that is your clue right there. You need to give him a call.
Yeah.
If it is in your mind at all, then you need to give him a call.
Yeah, so before we close out this episode, we wanted to let you know that we are looking to, God help us, make a jump to YouTube.
Yeah.
And that
we're working on it.
That's a couple middle-aged dudes trying to figure out how to
be. It may be season 57, but we're working on it.
That is in process, and we're talking about that. We're trying to make that a thing. If we do that, we will end up probably taking some of our audio episodes and uploading them there.
Yeah, I think we probably won't put every season on there, every episode, all those on there, but I
think will be a curated selection.
Yeah, I think we'll select some of the highlights from the Badge to the Bone seasons and put them on YouTube as an audio version. But hopefully before long here, we will start having the YouTube channel up, the Badge to the Bone channel.
So we're working in that direction. But again, those of you that are out there, if you like this show, please follow us on Spotify. Please find us on Facebook. like us, follow us there, share it with people that you
Please.
know that may be interested in the kind of things we're talking about here. It really does help us out as a program. All we're trying to do is extend our reach.
Yes.
And, if you do want to support us a little bit, this is not a money-making venture for us in any way. But, I'm sitting here looking at some recent equipment that Denny purchased out of his pocket, out of the goodness of his heart. So we do have a little bit of merch that is available. You want to tell them how they can find that?
So right now, the best way to find that is the link for the Badge to Bone podcast store on the Facebook page. Trying to get it on the website. We've been having some issues with our web provider. So the website is up, but it is dated, unfortunately. But we are working on updating it, and I will get that Badge to the Bone podcast store link on the website as well. But right now, you can go to Facebook and you click right on there, and you can order right off that store.
Yeah, and if you feel like it, message us on Facebook. We do try to respond to everything. May take us a minute, but we love interacting with you guys, and sometimes you bring some very important things to our attention, and I'm sure a couple of those things are going to end up on the show.
I think so.
So,
but that is going to wrap up this episode, Al.
I believe that it does.
And I know you already told them, but tell them again where they can find us.
Well, they can find us at badgetothebone.com. They can also email us at wearebadgetothebone@gmail.com or on Facebook at Badge to the Bone.
Awesome. And as always, for all you listening out there, make sure to be safe
And be well.